Hi everyone, in this video we're going to continue to do some pieces with making large data sets human by summarizing our data and making it visual for people to make sense of in 3 seconds or less. So think about infographics. We're trying to take big data sets and capture it in an image. And just like we did last week with our statistical summary table, we're taking a large data set today and we're condensing it into ranges, and we're counting how many artists were in each range. And that allows us to create a histogram, which you've seen before, and a cumulative frequency graph, which is more international. So the first thing we're going to do is decide on our categories. So here this reads 0 is less than or equal to X, which is less than 10. This is our claim sales. How many artists have between 0 and 10 million albums sold in our list? One thing I want to point out is that this first one I decided to make underline, and this second one I decided to not make underline. So think about where, if there was an artist that sold 30 million exactly based on our data collection, where would they go? Would they go in this category or would they go in this category? You would pause the video and think about that. But let's read the sentence out loud. 20 is less than or equal to X, but X is strictly less than 30. 30 is less than or equal to X and strictly less than 40. So the reason we have to write these as they are is we have to know where to put exactly 30 million, and I decided to write it the way I did, so 30 million would go into this category. If we go in and count those, I ended up counting, so that would be 30 to 40, but less than 40. So those highlighted cells, I counted 21 of those, and that is in a column called the frequency. And then our cumulative frequency adds up however many we have so far. So here we have 1 artist, here we have 1 artist plus 21 artists, which is 22 artists. And you know what? I'm going to make these with less decimals because we're talking about number of artists here. Here we have all 32 represented, and that would be correct if you end up getting 32 with your old amount plus your new amount. That is how many data points we have, and we should have them all covered by the end of our cumulative frequency graph. I didn't really like this chart because I felt like I had way too many artists in this category, and I wanted to break that up a little bit. So what I would like you guys to do today is finish this one. So we have, instead of going by 10s, we go by 5s, but I did mine wrong. You'll notice that I only underlined this first one. We have to go through and make sure you underline and make these all less than or equal to on your chart. So go through that. And then what we can do here is on our cumulative frequency, try to do it on your own. So pause the video, go through and see if you can fill that out, and then I'm going to show you the correct answer. Pause the video. Pause the video, try to do it on your own. And this is what you should end up getting. And in our cumulative frequency, I want to show you a trick here so it's flexible. So if we go to like this 19, what you could do is say equals our old amount, which is right above, and then add our new amount, which is the frequency that got added there. And then you can end up taking this cell right here, and you want to repeat that all the way down. So take that right-hand corner and drag it all the way down to this last one, and you should get the number 32 down there. So the next thing, now that we have a statistical summary table, is to make it very visual. Because right now, if I put this in a newspaper, people would be like, who cares? A human being can't understand this table in 5 seconds or less. So one thing I could do is I could make a histogram, and a histogram shows the frequency at each category. So if I go to Insert Chart and find Column Chart on my options under Setup, then it will start to show me how many were in each category. The problem is it doesn't have an x-axis, so I don't know what categories these are. So we're going to click Add X-axis, and you've noticed that I've added a mid-interval. The reason I had to do that was because these are not actual singular numbers, they're ranges. So I can't put that on my x-axis. So instead, we say, let's take the number that best represents this category, and that's the number smack dab in the middle. So we call that the mid-interval. So the mid-interval is going to be our x-axis. We're going to click OK. And now we can see roughly what is in each category. Let's see if it actually would have read. Select data range, and I want, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I want to pick an x-axis. Can I change this? Edit. And we'll delete that. Let's see if it would have taken this for our histogram. I know it won't take it for our cumulative. Yeah. And so you could use those ranges for your histogram. And then under Customize, you can play around with this and label your x-axis, label your y-axis as your frequency, and play around with the colors as well. Take some time, pause the video now, and play around with these things. I promise you will not break it, but try to figure out like how to add some grid lines, how to change colors, have a little play in how to customize, add titles to each axis. Play around with those things. Within some of the menus, you'll notice that you can change it between the vertical axis, the y-axis, and the horizontal axis. So that is how we can create a histogram. So we're going to move this to its own sheet and try to play around with that and label your x-axis and your y-axis. Then the other piece that we can do, and I'll label that my histogram. And the other piece we can do is we can use this data in what's called a cumulative frequency graph. So we're going to highlight this, insert chart, and we are going to find the line chart, and we would like the smooth line chart. So that should look like that. We're going to add our x-axis, and we're going to make sure that we select, I always hate when this goes right over my data. So move this to the side. Now add our x-axis, and this time we're going to use our mid-intervals. So now I've added my x-axis, and then I'm going to go into Customize and make sure I label my horizontal axis as albums sold in millions. And then my vertical axis is frequency, or cumulative frequency. And you can think of this as how many of the 32 so far. Okay, and I think I would like to add a few more grid lines. So if I put major grid line at 9, minor at maybe 4, because then I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I can change those colors. And then I'm going to do the same on my horizontal. We're going to go 9, so I can count up to 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that right? I can't quite tell. Yeah, if I see it, look at it between 30 and 40, that would be correct. And I think I'm also going to change the color of that line and make it just a little thicker. And you can play around however you want with that. And I am now going to move this to its own sheet. And I suppose you didn't have to, you could mess around with the dimensions. But I am now going to screenshot this with my snipping tool on Windows or my Control Command Shift 4 on a Mac. And I'm going to find our histogram and cumulative frequency graph task on our Google Classroom and paste this in. And you know what? I don't know if I like the dimensions of this. Do I like the dimensions of this? Let me see if I can zoom in here. Albums sold in millions. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go back here. We're going to go... oh yeah, if you just click that chart editor, so edit chart, it gives us a little more of a square cumulative frequency graph. Let's see if that does a better job when I put this in. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do, so view, zoom, I wonder if I can just get in a little more. I don't like that either. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, here we go. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to think about what are we actually reading here. So here is the number 32. That represents I have 32 data points represented in this graph. And so these are all of our data points lined out, just like a box and whisker plot. So we have 5 data points are right here, 10 data points here, 15 data points here, 32 data points here. And then what you can do is we can actually read all the quartiles off of a cumulative frequency graph. So that's 32. I'm inserting a line, and we're going to make these lines dotted and different colors. So let's make that one pink. And let's change the thickness. Okay. So there's all 32 data points. The other easiest one to find is your median, because median happens at 16 data points. So the median happens at this level. I'll bring it over to the actual line. So what is our estimated median? So we go over at 16 data points and down and ask how many million albums was that? And this would be our approximate median at about 31. The other thing that we can find with the cumulative frequency graph is our approximate Q3. So 32 divided by 4 is 8. So I suppose I could put my Q1 on there first. That's where my Q1 happens. Oops, I don't want to make that straight. That's where my Q1 happens. And its approximate value, bring it down here, would be right there. So now I can start to add my stickers. Right here is my median, or my estimated median. I say estimated because we put it in a smaller chart, so it's a little less exact than our box and whisker plot. So there's my estimated median where it happens. And then I'm going to change that to white so I can remember that. And then this is my estimated median. Estimated median equals about 31. Now, does a cumulative frequency graph do a good job of estimating? I don't know. Let's go back and look at our actual median. So our actual median was 32. So actually it's not bad. If we got an estimated median at 31 million, it actually did not do a bad job of estimating that. And if it would have just been over a little bit, that would have been 32. So what I'd like you to do is keep editing here and find your Q1 and label your Q1 just like we did with our median, and your Q3, and find your estimated Q3. And then do a box like we did on Friday with a C notice transition right here. And then in this little extra space over here, also show me what you did with your editing for your histogram. So show me what was your final histogram, what did that look like after you did your edits and customized it. Hopefully you have a few more labels than I do. And you can just make that quite small. If you want to include that in your C notice transition, you can. One thing to think about is what can we learn from this? So think about, could we look at this and say, ask the question again, how much of an outlier was Michael Jackson? And so you can see from here that we get all the way up to 31 million artists of the 32 million artists represented at about 51 million. I can read that off the cumulative frequency graph. This is where it hits the 31 million albums. And so all of this is waiting for Michael Jackson. And then here's where Michael Jackson happens. So that's how we can read from this where Michael Jackson happened. And you know what? It would be good for us, back to classes, it would be good for us to make sure we have that curiosity question on the top. So you could go into your second task and remind yourself, because you'll need this for your C notice transition, that our curiosity question today is the Michael Jackson Thriller album extraordinary in terms of best-selling albums of all time? So what can you see when you do your see notice transition? What we see above is a cumulative frequency graph. What can we notice about Michael Jackson? Where do we see him represented on this cumulative frequency graph? So that is your task for today.